Hello, and thank you all for joining us today from Ireland to Australia and everyone in between. We are delighted to welcome back life coach Talane Miedaner to today's Success Series webinar, Mastering Mindfulness at Work. For those of you who may not have been on one of our webinars with Talane before, Talane is the owner and founder of lifecoach.com and also of the Coaching Directory. She coaches executives, public officials, entrepreneurs and business owners all around the world, whether that's in person, by phone and, much like we're doing today, online. Not only does she lead numerous seminars both nationally and internationally, but you'll also find Talane frequently cited in the media as well. And she's also the author of 3 books: Coach Yourself to Success, The Secret Laws of Attraction, the effortless way to get the relationship you want, and Coach Yourself to a New Career. So let's continue, and I'll pass you over to Talane for today's session.
Great. So the question is quite simple. Do you already practice any sort of mindfulness or meditation? Do you have a meditation practice at all, even if it's 5 minutes a day? Okay, great. So we've got 36% already practicing and 64% no. All right, so we're going to talk today a little bit about what is mindfulness, why is it such a hot topic, what are some of the benefits of mindfulness and the meditation practice. We'll give you some very simple exercises, and the good news is it is very simple. It is really easy to integrate into your working life. So I'll go over some basic skills for mindfulness that you can use at work and how you can find some time to be more mindful at work, and slip that in without anybody necessarily even noticing, which will make you more productive and effective. And then we'll give you some resources and books and quizzes at the end as well. So basically, let's start with what is mindfulness, first of all. When I first was asked to do a seminar on mindfulness for Georgetown University, my alma mater, I said, "Are you kidding?" I just kind of thought it was a joke, the whole mindfulness thing. And I just said, "It's just meditation, isn't it? Isn't it just being present and being aware?" And I said, "It's so simple. All you really need to do is just turn off your phone." But it's actually a little bit more to that than that. So I actually did some research on it and started looking into mindfulness and what it means and why is it called mindfulness as opposed to meditation. It can be a walking meditation, a sitting meditation. It's a meditation you can do anywhere, anytime, any place. So that's really nice, because oftentimes we think of meditating as sitting still in a quiet surrounding, maybe on the beach or someplace, or in our room, and sitting down for at least half an hour to an hour. And yet most of us probably don't have that time to, or at least we don't make that kind of time to meditate properly like that. And so, for example, the deep transcendental meditation, which you go into a deep, deep relaxed state. Mindfulness is not that. So it's a kind of a quick and easy meditation that you can do. It's really about paying attention, being focused, being present in the moment, being able to stand back and observe yourself as the person who's having thoughts. So it's about being more of an observer of what's going on instead of getting caught up and forgetting. All right, so if we look at anytime you're noticing your thoughts and feelings, you are not your thoughts. So you think, wait a minute, if I'm thinking I'm having this thought, that means I am detached from that actual thought, so because I can observe myself having that thought. I think if you can get into a mindfulness state, it can often be like dreaming in the morning. If you are sort of awake in the morning, but you're still dreaming, and you can even control your dream a little bit and say, oh, I don't like that, but let's go to this bit. So it's being almost in that relaxed state, but still mentally aware. Whereas when you're in a full dream, it's not like that. You're completely in it, not aware that you're dreaming. So that's the difference. Mindfulness is not quite the same as being in the zone. For example, in sports, they talk about getting this peak sense of being completely one with the activity. In Zen Buddhism, they talk about the hitting of the bat with the baseball and you becoming one with the bat and the ball, and there's no sense of distinct self. So that's being in the zone where you actually, time collapses around you, you're in the flow of the moment, and you really don't even notice yourself. You're not observing anything. You're completely one with the activity. So mindfulness is not actually that. That's a wonderful state to be in. But if you were mindful and in the zone, you'd be aware. So it wouldn't quite be in the zone because there's no sort of self-awareness when you're in the zone. You become one with the activity. So you're not really aware of self. Whereas mindfulness, you're definitely the observer. And the people give credit to the origin or the father of mindfulness is, and I cannot pronounce Thich Nhat Hanh. I have no idea how you pronounce his actual name, but he's considered the father of mindfulness and has written very simple books. For example, a book on how to sit. That's the title of the book, How to Eat, How to Breathe. So he's written a series of very simple guides to becoming more mindful in the very simple things of breathing, eating, walking. It's very simple. Okay, so that's sort of the origin, how it got started. But why is this so popular now? You see the coloring books and everything else out right now. And, I completely blame it to cell phones, social media. We are in a world of incredible amounts of information. I was reading somewhere that we check our devices 2,600 times a day. That's the average use. Some people might be more than that. 2,600 times a day. I mean, that's a lot of checking. So with that constant interruption, the feeling that we always have to be checking our phones, our devices, checking our emails. So, and this notion that we're trying to multitask, we're trying to do multiple things at a time. Some of you right now might be checking emails while you're listening to this webinar and trying to multitask, or maybe even having conversations with people. So we're always trying to do too much at once. And we don't have an off button for the world. It sometimes would be nice to just turn the world off, but we can't. Life keeps happening, time passes on. So all that occurs. Ruby Wax has written a funny book called The Mindfulness Guide for the Frazzled, and it is really about bringing yourself into the present moment. And she has said that free-flowing digital information consumes our attention, and ironically, it causes its decline. So the very stuff that has given us this 24/7 on tap to the digital world is what's creating this need and desire. We had an overwhelming response for this webinar and had to put people on a waiting list. But clearly there's a need here to become more present, to be more relaxed, to be calmer in the chaotic world that we live in. So that's why this has suddenly become a sort of a hot trend. And I think, it's also people are worried about the stress that they're under. And we know that any sort of meditation or mindfulness practice will decrease your stress, and with that decrease risks of heart disease, cancer, all sorts of other health problems that are related with stress. So we know stress is a real big killer, and it's anything that can benefit or help us reduce stress has got to be a good thing. We also want to be able to enjoy the life we're in. I mean, what's the point of living if you're not even aware of the life that you've had? If you're whizzing and running, just getting through things, not actually experiencing the present, well then you're not actually living in the present. Where are you living? There's no present awareness. You're actually losing your life in a sense. You're not getting a full experience of living. And happiness comes from being in the present. So mindfulness is really just a tool or technique. It's a mental technique to help you bring yourself to the present and be aware instead of just going, doing. And it's ironically, when we are more relaxed, when we're calmer, even in the midst of complete chaos, we then are more creative and more productive. So it's good for work as well. And how does this work? Basically, our brain has this incredible plasticity to it, and that every experience that we have changes your brain. So from second to second, your brain is creating new neural pathways every single experience. So basically, our brains are extremely plastic. They're very malleable and flexible in the sense of always changing. Whatever behavior we just did now will be creating a neural pathway. And if we repeat that behavior again and again and again, that neural pathway becomes stronger until it becomes a habit. So it is quite true that our thoughts become our actions, and those become our habits, and our habits become our destiny. It becomes who we are. So for better or for worse, if you have good habits or bad habits, and I've done other webinars on habits, but mindfulness is almost the reverse of habits. Because you think about a habit as something that you do unconsciously, whereas, mindfulness is something that you do very consciously. So it's the reverse of a habit. So we want to program in some good habits, but we also want to take a break and be aware of what we're doing. If you think about mindfulness as a way to change your bad habits, a way to reprogram your brain so that you're decreasing your worry, anxiety, and hostility, and it has the benefit of increasing kindness, compassion, awareness, and reflection. And then as an added bonus, meditators live longer than non-meditators. So if that's not an incentive to practice a little bit of mindfulness, I don't know what is. So let's go through some of the basic skills that we have. So the first thing is to notice. Start just noticing how you're reacting, perhaps. Is your boss in a bad mood? Does that make you feel anxious? Is somebody shouting or angry or arguing? Notice if they're in a good mood. Does that make you feel better? Are you more relaxed? If you find yourself reacting in a negative way or getting stressed from something that's going on, you can always take a little bathroom break. Excuse yourself and say, excuse me, and then if you need to cool down, you can do a little mindfulness practice in the bathroom. Relax, calm yourself back down, and then come back and start the conversation again. You might label something. What is the emotion that you're feeling? Are you frustrated? Are you annoyed? What's going on? Scan your body. Where is the tension? Are you using the reptilian mode in your brain or the prefrontal cortex? So your brain, if we go back to our brain slide here, at the front of your brain, this is the prefrontal cortex. In the back, you've got the reptilian, or basically the ancient brain. The old part of our brains are very useful there. That's their instinctive brain, so that if a lion jumps out from a bush to eat you, you would jump out of the way. Unfortunately, we're still using that. So if your boss, jumps out of the corner and asks you to do something, we're often reacting with this sort of primitive brain, if you would. It's our instinctive brain. It's a useful thing to have because you do want to be able to jump out of the way of a lion should one happen to pass. What we're not using so much is the prefrontal cortex. This is the rational, logical part of the brain. And the problem with checking our phones all the time is that we end up being in a reactionary mode. We're sort of in a flight or fight mode. We're always boom, 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 boom. We're here in this sort of stressed out mode, which puts us in the reptilian, the ancient instinctive brain. The logical brain, this is the calm brain. This is the one where we think things through and can respond rationally and calmly. That gets kind of put on hold, and we're not using the best part of our brains. So the practice of mindfulness can help us basically use our prefrontal cortex, use our good part of our brains, think better in a sense, than just using our very primitive brains. And most of us are running around stressed and just in a reactive state. And when we react without thinking, sometimes we say the wrong things and it has a negative repercussion. You all know about that, I'm sure. So let's do a quick little beginner's guide to meditation. So I'm going to just take you through a very simple meditation. You can do this right now. So of course you can't be multitasking at the moment. So if you would all just take a second, and we're only going to just very short sample just to take you through this because a lot of people, 64% of you are new to meditation. So if you just sit in your chair right now, I'm going to assume you're on a chair. You can do this standing if you want. That's the great thing about this. And just put your feet squarely on the ground just for a minute. And don't worry, I'm not going to have you do anything odd in the office. You can all just do this. And now just relax your hands in your lap. Just make sure just your arms kind of drop. You can have your hands just wherever they feel comfortable, just resting on your lap. And sit tall. Imagine a string going right through the back of your spine and pulling you up. So you may be touching the back of the chair, but don't slump back or relax into the chair. Use your own spine to hold you erect and just sit very, very tall. So that's just the first thing there. Now you can close your eyes or you can just let your eyes kind of be softly gazing on something. So maybe there's something on your desk, a pen or something. You can just gaze at the pen with your eyes just gently looking at it. That's called drishti in yoga practice. But just gently let your eyes close if you feel that's appropriate, or you can have them just gently open. And now the first thing to do is just observe your surroundings. Are you sitting on the chair? How does the chair feel? How do your feet feel on the ground? What are the noises going on around you? Are there any sounds in the background? Are there any smells? You smell your cup of coffee, perhaps. So what are you noticing about your surroundings? Just take a moment to take in everything around you. Okay, so you just notice the surroundings, how you're feeling. Now you can take a breath. So we're going to start to breathe. You can just take a nice deep breath and notice the breath going in all the way through your belly. Maybe does it start from your belly? Where are you starting your breath? Feel it go through your lungs, through your nose, and breathe in and out. Just, you don't have to do anything special. It can be a deep breath. Breathe in. Maybe take a deep breath. Breathe out. And just notice your breathing for it. Just observe your breathing going in and out. Just focus on that. If you notice your mind thinking, oh gosh, when is this going to end, or whatever thoughts you're having, just relax and go back to focusing on your breath. Some people like to count, and they breathe in, and then they breathe out. 1, breathe in, breathe out. 2, and so you count to 10 perhaps, just this little quick mini relaxation, or you can go for longer. And you can use a simple mantra such as I breathe in, I breathe out. You can create any mantra you wish. Some of the more experienced meditators might be given a mantra to practice. But simple I breathe in, I breathe out, counting can also work. It doesn't matter. Maybe you can focus on a word. If you want to think calm, peace, love, you can have any mantra you want. It's just so it helps you focus your mind on a thought because our mind will wander. So now you can notice, you can calm your mind, notice your thoughts. What are you thinking about? Are you worried about something that's going to happen, a meeting? Anything, you'll notice your thoughts will want to get in there. And I sometimes find that if I take a moment to just get out a piece of paper and jot down some of the things, like a to-do might appear. Oh, I forgot to remember to pick up milk on the way home. Just write that down. I know this is not a normal practice, but we're in real life here. I've got 2 kids. You want to start getting those thoughts out on paper and then bring back to your breathing. Start back at step 4 and pull your focus back. And if you still have more thoughts coming down, write them down. I find it's much easier than trying to, they say that you can just dismiss them mentally, and some people are able to do that, and you may work up to that. I find it really helps to write them down, and then you don't have to worry about it. It tends to not come back because you know, okay, I've taken that thought down. And then just bring back to your breath. I breathe in, I breathe out. Okay, and you can do that for a moment as long as you wish. There's no set time. You might do this for just a count of 10 for 3 breaths. If you don't have any time, you might do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You might do it for an hour. The smallest amount, even 5 minutes, makes a huge difference. So then you come back out of your meditation, and you might just start noticing, wiggle your toes or fingers. Some people, when they're meditating, they set an alarm. If particularly at work, you may want to set some sort of an alarm to bring you back out of it if you relax quite easily. Some people use beads. You might have a necklace or use some beads to track how many breaths you take. And when you come back to the clasp, you know you've done your whole round. But whatever tool you want to use, you don't need to use anything. So it's really simple. And then the key here is to practice often. Little and often, it's actually more effective than 1 hour meditation or a 2-hour meditation once a week. You're much better off if you just do 5 minutes a day. It's the daily habit that's key to build that into your practice. And the great thing about this mindfulness is because it is so easy to incorporate into your daily life. And I'm going to give you some tools on how to do that. So little and often is actually really effective, and it builds that muscle in your brain, basically the habit of becoming focused, of becoming self-aware. Like any other habit, it's a mental exercise, and like any other exercise like lifting weights, you can strengthen your muscles by lifting weights. So in a sense, you can strengthen your ability to be focused and calm in the midst of chaos by doing these simple exercises. Going back to our skills, you might, for example, start reflecting. If you notice your colleagues or your boss is stressed, angry, or sad, you can reflect back and say, that's really frustrating. I'd be annoyed if that happened to me. Focus. You might want to put your phone away when you're listening to somebody. Sometimes if you find somebody really annoying, so you might just notice that, observe that. Instead of getting triggered by it, just notice, oh gosh, that person's yelling, or that person's, notice the sound as opposed to the words that they're saying. Without judgment, just observing things without forming, oh, that's good or that's bad, or I don't like that, or I do like that. Instead, just observe what you're noticing. Oh, they have a really shrill and annoying voice. That's interesting. So without that judgment, and that's the sort of non-judgmental approach of just observing as a detached observer in your own mind. And as you start doing this, you'll find it's easier and easier to become calm. Okay, it helps, however, to make it much easier if you can create a conducive environment. So if you can get rid of interruptions by turning on your voicemail so that your phone is not bothering you, let it go to message. Turn off your cell phone. Find a quiet place. Maybe I had a client who used to go into the supply cupboard where the staplers and paper were, and he said nobody would ever go in there, and he'd sit in a chair in the supply cupboard and meditate for 5 or 10 minutes just to bring some calm back. Some people use the bathroom. Some people can go for a walk. If you can go for a walk, even if it's just down the office halls, using headphones, earplugs. Some people find it's better if they can telecommute or say, can I work a couple of hours in the coffee shop? It's quieter there than it is in the office. If you have an open floor plan, it might be really hard to focus. A lot of offices have an open door policy, but you might actually want to add a closed door policy and say, when the door is closed, I'm focusing. I'm working on a project and trying to get into the flow state of really super focused concentration. So if you have the closed door, other people put signs up. I've heard people put traffic cones if they're in an open floor plan to say you don't come here. And of course, just the basics, cleaning your desk off. Anytime you can eliminate a distraction, visual distraction or an auditory distraction, list your annoyances and get rid of them. All that helps to create a more conducive environment, but it's not essential. You can meditate in a messy office. You can meditate in an open floor plan. Just observe the noise. Include that. So, for example, if you ideally, maybe you could sit on a beach and listen to the ocean waves. Great, but we're not often on a beach listening to ocean waves. But you can create the ebb and flow of the noise in the office, the people talking, the computer keyboards. Just incorporate that all into your meditation. Don't fight it. Go with it. A couple of tricks I'm going to give you so you can start, because a lot of people were asking about how can you do this in a chaotic environment. And I want to give you guys, cut you a little bit of slack here. It's not easy necessarily to do that. When I used to live in New York City, which is pretty chaotic, a busy city. And on weekends, occasionally, I would go to this Shivananda yoga retreat. And they took a van full of New Yorkers out to the Catskill Mountains in the country. And we'd have a weekend retreat, eating vegetarian food, doing yoga practices and meditation, doing our service work. And basically, it was a lovely escape from the city, and it was a great chance to be calm. I found out that the head of the Shivananda Center, every 2 years, they would replace the person, the poor guy or woman who was working there as the head, because it's very hard in New York City to be calm and focused because of all the input of the city. So if you're in a big city, you might find it is challenging, that you do need to take more retreats and take more breaks. So I'm going to say that even if the head of the Shivananda Yoga Center could only be there 2 years before being fried, and these guys practice this all the time, we can cut ourselves a little slack if we're feeling stressed. But this is where it can come in. I can come in and help you out with a few things. To incorporate mindfulness throughout the day, a very simple strategy is to simply show up 10 minutes early to all your meetings. So if you have an appointment, book in 10 minutes before a phone call and use that 10 minutes. Just do a quick meditation, even 5 minutes. If you're in a meeting, show up 10 minutes early. Maybe use that first 5 minutes to download all the thoughts flying through your brain, because they'll be there. Write them down, and then you have 5 more minutes to just sit and breathe, notice your thoughts, your feelings, do a quick little meditation. And if you do this throughout the day, you'll be amazed at how much more relaxed you are. And personally as well, if you're going to the school, drop your kids off 10 minutes early, and then use that little 10 minutes of time not to check your Facebook or your Twitter or anything else, but to actually just sit and breathe. So we have these little pockets. Maybe you're standing in the grocery store and you're getting annoyed because there's such a long queue. Instead of getting annoyed, you could say, okay, great, I can do a little meditation. You might even do a moving meditation. Maybe you roll your neck around and stretch your neck. Maybe you lift your groceries up and down with your arm and get a little exercise and just mindfully notice how you're lifting the bag and the pull in your muscles. Again, anything is an excuse to be mindful. If people, you can even practice a non-judgmental practice of speaking, and say somebody comes into your office and says, oh, I've got this great idea, da, 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 and they tell you, and you say, oh, thanks, I hadn't considered that. And maybe you think it was a rubbish idea, but you just say, thanks, I haven't considered that. And that's just a way of being grateful for people contributing without necessarily having to have a judgment about it. Single tasking versus multitasking. We live in a multitasking world. People think that they all are multitaskers. And actually, some people are born multitaskers, and some people aren't, and most people aren't. And even if you are a multitasker, the only way to properly multitask is if one thing has become a habit. So for example, you can do 2 things at once when you're driving a car, because you've got a route to work. It's automatic. You're on automatic pilot. You don't need to think consciously about driving the car. So that frees you up to have a conversation with somebody in the car, for example. That is multitasking. When you were first learning to drive, or maybe if you're driving in a really dangerous condition with heavy sleet or snow, you probably wouldn't have that conversation. You say, I need to focus on the driving and really concentrate. So we can only multitask properly if one of those is being run on automatic, and then that our brain is free to do another. So if you are thinking, oh, no, I multitask all the time, you may want to take a different approach to that and slow yourself down. So give yourself permission to do one thing at a time. So if you're on the phone talking to somebody comes into your office, you could either stop that conversation and say, can you hold for a moment, handle the interruption, or you could stop the interruption, put a hand up, and gesture that they need to wait a minute and finish the conversation on the phone. So choose. It's a matter of saying, I'm only going to do one thing at a time. It's a psychological trick. But by saying, I'm only going to do one thing at a time, even when lots is going around at the same time, you're only doing and focusing on one thing at a time. That actually makes us feel more relaxed and in control of things. And then another trick is just being grateful. Mindfulness includes gratitude for what we have and for being present in the moment. So I think it's helpful to keep a box of thank you notes in your desk at work. And if somebody does something nice or something happens, to think, okay, who can I thank today? And write a note and send it out, either in the office, out of the office, anybody in your life. You can use mindfulness on your lunch break. So for eating, you can have a little mindfulness exercise, noticing every single bite and texture. So for example, if you were to eat a raisin mindfully, you'd put that raisin on the palm of your hand. You would notice it. Maybe you'd smell it, sniff it. Does it have any smell? Can you notice that? What's the texture of the raisin? That's mindful eating. And we don't often eat that way. Most people eat mindlessly and aren't even aware how hungry they are. So you might just say before you start to eat your lunch, how hungry are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Rate yourself. Observe your food before you start tucking in. And then you could use your time at the lunch break or your afternoon coffee break to go for a walk instead of having caffeine, or stretch at your desk, or have a 15-minute meditation. You'll be much more refreshed than if you use a coffee break. And then we had a question as well about keeping work at work. How do you leave your work behind? And before you enter your house, you might have the gateway of your front door or whatever door you enter the house be the where you, from passing through that, you mentally leave your work behind. Or you might sit in your car and do a 5-minute meditation, jot down your ideas, problems, and think about what your intention is for your family. How do you want to be with your family tonight? What mood do you want to be in? Do you want to be present and aware? And I had one client just said, just leave your phone in the car. Don't bring it in the house. Leave your electronics there. Don't get tempted. And just be there for your family, because you probably don't have that much time with them. So here's the key thing here. You can't do this wrong. A lot of people get anxious. Am I doing this wrong? You will have thoughts. When you focus on your breathing, your mind will wander. But you'll just keep pulling it back. Oh, yes, I'm not focusing on my breathing. And as you practice it, you'll find that you're able to do it for longer times. You're able to focus more clearly. You might want to put a little sticky note, a visual reminder, practice mindfulness, something, be mindful, be present, something that is going to be your little trigger, and change these visual reminders when they get stale and you don't notice them. So you keep your practice going, especially to start. A visual reminder is helpful. And then you can gradually increase your practice over time. And the good news is that you can change your brain. You can become more focused and present and happier, more productive and calmer with just these very simple little actions. A book that can help you is Coach Yourself to Success. It has 101 tips in it. And basically, a lot of those tips are about creating a conducive environment for your life. Because if you've got a lot of annoyances and distractions or clutter in your life, it's harder to relax. The New York guys struggle to be calm and peaceful in that environment. So controlling your environment is a great way, and the tips in there will help you with that. And then there's a couple of books you might enjoy. Essentials Guides to Life. Those are very basics, like how to sit, how to breathe. Good stuff to know how to do. We aren't even doing breathing right. It's very, very difficult to focus on being relaxed if you're breathing very shallowly and not properly. We've got quizzes on my lifecoach.com website. You can go. We've got all the social media there and other resources. If you want to email me, feel free to do that.
Thank you so much for your time, Talane, in developing this and presenting it. We've had so many questions through, really, really good response.
And thank you everyone for joining. See you on the next webinar.